Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Hey, greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup, where Dives and Al ruminate on the great and spacious beehive. We have episode 24 coming at you. We've been going at this for a little while now. Episode 24 for the week of September 11th, 2022. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints issues a statement on the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. Me and Dives are going to talk to you about that. Also, is the NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers going to convert to Mormonism? Let's find out. Also, we got some updates on the Mormon LDS temple fire and also the alleged racist BYU Volleyball incident. And Dives and Al are going to read off a submission from a listener of their prophecy about the upcoming October General Conference. So thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here, Al. Everything going well with your week?
Everything's gone pretty good this week. It's I'm glad to be here. Although Mormon news was kind of sparse at the beginning of the week, wasn't it?
Yeah, we didn't see anything from Monday to Thursday that I honestly thought was newsworthy whatsoever. And I didn't even know we were going to have a show, but it all filled in on Friday and Saturday, didn't it?
Yep, it got to be a juicy week after all. So we're glad that, and also we're glad that people are contributing. So yeah, if you have contributions, please send them over to us.
Yeah, and you can come over to our website at MormonNewsRoundup.org or send us an email to kolob at MormonNewsRoundup.org. If you have any news articles that you want us to go over on the program, we'll be sure to look at them. Now, that brings us to our Mormon joke of the week. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Al, are you ready for this? What do you get when you cross a Jehovah's Witness and a Mormon?
Oh, boy. I'm a little worried. I don't know. What do you get when you cross a Jehovah's Witness and a Mormon?
Well, I don't know either, but get it off of my porch.
Agreed.
I'm not sure what you get when you cross those two. So let's have some follow-ups from our last week here. Let's get right to the articles here. So in the last little bit, we've discussed for like about a month there the Orem Temple, which is which caught fire, and this is an article by Tad Walsh on the Church News, September 6, 2022. It has now been declared an arson, and they're offering a cash reward. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is offering up to $5,000 for the information about the fire that was set back on July 25th. They finally told us what happened with that.
Yeah. So let's see. The week that you were in Europe, me and Deborah Anderson talked about this one. I looked for a follow-up, and there wasn't any follow-up. They never released whether it was arson or whether it was accidental. So I guess now we finally get our update. They determined that there was enough evidence to consider it to be arson. So now they're reaching out a month and a half later to see if there's anybody that can remember all the way back to July. Was there anybody suspicious that you recognized coming out of the temple?
Well, I'm not sure about that. A number of people reported it. Motorists on I-15 and Geneva Road, and there's smoke coming from the top. And they said that the automatic foam went and suppressed some of the fire, so that's good. And Orem Fire Department, they responded to it. But now it's officially been declared an arson. I guess it took them a while. They must have been doing some forensics or whatever else investigations. But
it must have been.
It seems like vandalism has really been on the rise against Latter-day Saint buildings in particular in the last.
It sure does, yeah. Especially after the release of that AP article. That one really did a lot of damage.
Yeah, I don't know if this is related to that, but it very well could be.
It could be. It's a little before that, but yeah. But then again, this is also a time when there's been a lot of problems with between BYU and the LGBTQ, which we're going to talk about in the show as well. So it could have been any kind of motivation to cause vandalism there.
Yeah, and that's deplorable. That should hopefully the person who did that will be held to justice. Now, I saw a tweet here by one of my favorite Twitter accounts, which is the fake LDS Newsroom. It's a parody account of the church's main site, and it says here, regarding the fact that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is offering a cash reward, it is saying, hey, if this was tweeted out, if you have any information on whoever may have started the Orem LDS temple fire, please call the Quit Mormon hotline to determine if mandatory reporting applies to your area. I guess it's supposed to be This is supposed to be like, like the AP story. Like,
Uh-huh.
are you a mandatory reporter? I mean, this is kind of a joke there.
Are bishops supposed to report when there's abuse, or are they just supposed to help their people work through it? Because there's laws in states that you can get in big trouble, according to Curtin McConkie, if you report child abuse.
Yeah, you can, and apparently that's where the Twitter account is going. There's a lot of woke.
Hmm.
There's a lot of woke Exmos out there that are trying to argue that the burning of the temple is actually a neutral act in response to the recent events, and not anti-Mormon in nature. And it's
Hmm.
just like, how can you possibly interpret this as a neutral account? This is not. This is
Hmm.
in no way, shape, or form is this a neutral thing. So
Yeah. Well, this isn't the only temple that's ever caught fire, right?
yeah, yeah.
Let's
Samoa
see.
Temple. Well,
Oh,
what
that's
was that,
right.
like 1994?
Yeah,
I
back
want
in
to
the
say.
'90s, Samoa, let's see what, Apia Samoa Temple caught fire and I believe you're right, '94.
Yeah, and it was shut down for like 4 years.
Yeah, they had to
Um,
really do a renovation on it.
yeah, and the Nauvoo Temple was also when Brigham Young left. When the
Hmm.
Saints pulled out of Nauvoo,
Yeah,
they
they
didn't want
set
the
fire
same thing
to
to
it.
happen. Yeah, they set fire to it. They didn't want the same thing to happen to Kirtland Temple. They left the
Hmm.
Kirtland Temple and it was taken over by other people. They didn't want the same thing to happen.
Hmm.
They set fire to that as well. We
Yeah.
have the Orem Temple fire, and then
Hmm.
actually, if you kind of think about it, the second Provo Temple, back when it
Yeah,
was a
the Center
tabernacle.
Street. Yeah, but when it was the Tabernacle, you're right. I used to attend state conference at that Tabernacle actually, and it caught fire after I moved away. But yeah, then they rather than scrap it, they decided to preserve it, restore it, and turn it into one of the mini temples.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I attended
Hmm.
many meetings, also did a lot of concerts there since I was a musician for a number of
Yeah.
years. Really special place.
Uh-huh.
Love the Tabernacle.
And the inside of it was very classic, like pioneer tabernacle style. You had like
Exactly.
the upstairs that was kind of built out over the congregation on the ground floor, and then the multi-tiered seating up at the pulpit. I mean, just really classic look.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. We'll see if
Hmm.
anybody is able to find anyone. And we also have two other follow-ups. One is
Hmm.
the racist BYU volleyball incident has come up empty-handed, hasn't it, Al?
It's kind of funny because BYU police department and their whole investigation, they said, well, we've investigated ourselves and cleared ourselves of any wrongdoing. So they couldn't find any evidence, and yet I haven't heard if they've unbanned the accused student from UVU. I don't know that they've undone that, but they've just said, "Hey, we can't find any evidence that there was any racial slurs yelled out." Now, we have seen it discussed that, like saying "Go Cougars," it ends in a hard GER, Cougars. So there's a possibility that there was some mistake that was misheard, but who knows at this point? Yeah, and all we know is that they've looked at the video, they've looked at the audio, they don't see the response that you would expect, but obviously this young lady felt like she heard what she heard, so even so, I do feel bad for her because it doesn't mean that there's no racism in the Utah County area. It's a predominantly white area, and I've seen secondhand, I guess, because I wasn't the direct receiver of it, but I have seen secondhand some really awful things happen in Utah County towards people of color.
Yeah. Now, we talked about this already a couple of weeks, but it's still making the rounds. Hopefully, this will put the thing to bed. But we said last week, I actually went back and listened to our episode. I said last
Mhm.
week, quote, I said that no one is going to find this N word or
Mhm.
whatever other racial slurs. I made
Yeah,
that prediction last week, and it came to fruition. Nobody has found anything.
you called it. Yep. Yeah,
This is
you.
like 50
Mhm.
this is many videos, 50 eyewitnesses,
Yeah.
including Duke players, athletic personnel, BYU scrutinizing everything. They called for
Mhm.
tip lines. They opened it. The police were involved. This is
Mhm.
they're mobilizing more people to find this. They're about the same number of people that they're trying to find the racial slurs is about the same number of people that we mobilized to find Osama bin Laden. They
True.
haven't found anything. You know what I mean?
Yep, that's right.
So I don't know. I'm glad to see this put behind us, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that. in some ways, I'm glad that they didn't find someone, because that's great. That
Yeah.
nobody should be subjected to racial slurs when they come on the BYU. But in other ways, I'm
Yeah.
kind of sad, because
hmm
maybe they could have found who it is, and like, hold them to account.
Well, I guess the sad thing is that it's not a unbelievable story. Like it would be an unbelievable story if it was, it's some really progressive, East Coast college where that word would it would end in immediate expulsion. And you'd be shocked if it was from some other university, but from BYU, like, oh, somebody yelled out the N-word at a BYU game. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and the athletic director, he actually went on CNN, and he
hmm
committed to fighting racism. And
hmm
I'm not surprised it was a UVU student. I think it's time to reignite the Mormon war between BYU and UVU. I think let's get this thing
Yep,
kicked up into high gear.
exactly. They need to start playing each other.
I'm just kidding.
Mhm.
I'm not calling for anything like that. Anything.
Yeah.
Although I have to tell you that I did teach at BYU. I taught at UVU, so I guess I'm one of the few people who can say that. So it's just,
Mhm.
according to the article, BYU sincerely apologizes. Um,
Mhm.
we have found no evidence that any individual engaged in any negative activity whatsoever,
Mhm.
and it's just this is literally where there's smoke, there's fire. There's no fire here. There's a whole lot of smoke and
Mhm.
no fire whatsoever.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the findings. So, well, or maybe fortunately, that's the findings.
Yeah,
Because
I don't know.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, this is the 21st century. We should be, above this kind of behavior at this point.
absolutely. It's very deplorable, and I'm glad that they investigated it. And hopefully, this is the last that we're going to hear about an incident of this nature. Now, our next follow up, we have three follow ups for this week. Is
Mhm.
Utah representative, and you found this article, right, Al? Utah
This,
representative
yeah,
told Mormon bishop not to report the abuse. As Doc show, this is Michael
yeah,
Resendez. Once again, this is yesterday in the Associated Press. This is his third article on
yeah,
church abuse.
yeah. This was one of those 11th hour topics that came up, and so yeah, we found out that one of our state representatives here in the state of Utah has actually the documents show that he was the employee at Curtin McConkie that reported or that talked to these bishops, both of the bishops down in um, Arizona, and told them, "Look, if you report this to the police, then you and the church can be held liable for breaking the confidentiality of the priest penitent privilege." And so he advised him not to report it, even though what we found out is through the investigation is that Arizona's law makes accommodation for people to report child abuse. Like if there's sexual abuse of a child, no, you're not going to get in trouble for reporting it, even under the clergy penitent privilege. If somebody's
Yeah,
confessing to it, you can report it and you won't get in trouble.
yeah, we've covered this in our previous podcast episodes. That Arizona is a state in which you can report it if you want, but you don't have to. It's not a mandatory reporter, but you're not going to get into any trouble if you do. So this is a Utah State lawmaker. What is his position?
He is a state representative, so a state congressman. He's not like a United States congressman, but he goes to the state legislature on that level. His name's Merrill F. Nelson. He is a Republican. I don't know if it bears mentioning that, but it's not surprising. It's the state of Utah. Okay, of course it's a Republican. we don't
I
we
believe he
don't have
represents.
Democrats outside of
Not
Salt Lake.
really, not
Yeah,
really. I think he represents Davis County. Is that
hmm
correct? So
yeah,
his full time job is to work for Curtin McConkie. As a part time, he's a legislator. And this is from AP. It's a
hmm
quality news source, and they're talking about the actual transcripts of the calls now. So I
yeah,
mean, we've got documented evidence. This is the individual most responsible for
hmm
telling those bishops to not report the sexual abuse, which ended up greatly harming those two young girls, and also ended
yeah,
up contributing to Paul Adams' death and
hmm
his wife's imprisonment. And now we know who the
yeah.
individual who's involved with this, who's most directly responsible.
Yeah, and of course, the LDS Church is fighting back against it. The church is trying to keep access to those records banned because the church insists they're confidential. And the church has also appealed to the Court of Appeals after the Cochise County judge has decided to rule in favor of the victims and said, no, you don't get to have confidentiality anymore on those records. They need to be subpoenaed.
That's very interesting. And we also saw that the judge didn't rejected the Paul Adams priest penitent privilege because he posted those videos of his sexual abuse on the internet.
That's
that means
right.
you don't have priest penitent privilege either. So we're seeing that priest penitent privilege, far from being a sacrosanct sacrament,
Oh, no.
is something that is extremely fleeting. And when it comes down to when people are directly being harmed in a continuous manner, that priest penitent privilege, that it just falls away. It's
Yeah, for sure. And, there's been a lot of criticism of Michael Resendez, the reporter on this from the LDS community. But even whatever your opinion is of the guy is a very thorough, well documented, and well cited reporter. He does not make stuff up. He doesn't have an axe to grind with the church. He may have an axe to grind with religion in general, overall. Maybe he's a bit of a crusader. Sure. Maybe he's got a motivation, but he's not just going out there throwing whatever he can and doing whatever he can to destroy the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He is building a case and building the story.
Yeah, in fact, the church itself has responded directly to his articles a couple of times in this case. So, I mean, they are not just taking his articles and just hoping that people don't notice them. They are putting them on the front page of the Deseret News, and they're responding to them point by point, trying to refute his reporting. So we're seeing a real power struggle here between the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and Mr. Resendez. I don't think I don't think this is the last we're going to hear of him with the church. That's for sure.
No, for sure. And it seems that the last defense that the church has against these articles is, well, the Trump following argument that you can't trust the liberal media, and that's about it. That's the only thing they've got to hang on to is, oh, well, you can't trust this guy because he's with the Associated Press, which is not Fox News.
No, and Mr. Nelson here, who is the lawyer that we're talking about, who made the advice to the bishops, he has in the past, the AP story talks about how in the past that, guess what, he when priest penitent privilege came up and said, do you want to make a mandatory reporters? Well, he's been against that. I guess that's not a surprise.
Yeah, I guess not, because it certainly makes it easier to keep these things under wraps, I guess. But all that does is we forget that, sometimes I think lawyers forget about the real world applications in the name of trying to do their job extremely well. And when it comes to this, you're talking about some technicalities of a priest penitent privilege. This is like a very obscure loophole to get out of reporting the abuse of children. And those children have suffered at the hands of a perpetrator. And what that's essentially saying is that, well, it's better for us to let these kids continue to suffer the abuse at the hands of their perpetrator than to report it and actually do something about getting the perpetrator some help and getting these kids out of that situation.
Yeah, Mr. Nelson, he's representing the church, and as such, his job is to reduce or limit his client's liabilities towards future lawsuits. He doesn't care, and his job is not to care about the people who are being harmed.
Yeah,
that should be the difference between a lawyer and a bishop. A bishop should be caring about his flock, about the people who are under his charge.
Well, and who more than the lambs of the flock? I mean, the children, right?
Yeah. Look, if you're a bishop, you should do these lawyers, they don't have the keys of the priesthood. They only give you advice. Okay, that the lawyer is not the president of the church. That's great. He gave you some advice and said, don't report it. Well, you can do your own research and figure out that, Arizona is not a mandatory state, but I could go ahead and report that on my own. So that's what bishops should be doing, is thinking for themselves and not just taking whatever a lawyer said on the other line as God's own truth.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and just one other thing is, Mr. Resendez here, there's an old saying from the Washington Post, and it says democracy dies in darkness, meaning without this kind of journalism, investigative, difficult journalism that that is very controversial, and also is subjecting these reporters to reprisals from the church, saying, hey, this reporter, he's got it all wrong, he's got his facts backwards, this guy doesn't know his butt from, he can't tell which way is up.
Yeah,
He's
for sure.
subjecting himself to that, when he could be just reporting on something that's mundane, but he's doing it because it's really important.
Yeah, he is. And, that's the kind of journalism that is, it's kind of shocking nowadays because we don't see it that much anymore. But, it's refreshing when you do get to see somebody hold somebody else's feet to the fire and say, hey, look, you need to justify your behavior. Otherwise, you're looking really guilty by the evidence that we found.
Yeah, so I'm starting to follow Michael Resendez on Twitter, and also he's gone on to some of the podcast circuits and some other things, including I think he did a Mormon Land podcast with the Salt Lake Tribune. He's not just publishing in his mother's basement here. He's making the rounds, defending his journalism, and he's a real crusader, and I can't wait to see what he uncovers next.
Oh, he's far more legitimate than these two journalists here that are, I can't call ourselves journalists. We're podcasters. He's far more legitimate than you or I.
I would not call myself a journalist. I would call myself a C-list editorial commentator.
Exactly. That's what we're here to do, is offer you our commentary. That's why you guys tune in every week to listen to us.
Hey everybody, it's D-Vase here. Thanks so much for listening to the Mormon News Roundup. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Allow me to explain. Anchor has the tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Now those are our follow-ups. Any other follow-ups from last week, Al? Or
no, I think we covered it all. Like I said, it was kind of a dry week going into it.
Yeah. Now, before we get into our feature news article, which is our headlining article this week, we do want to take a moment. Today is 9/11. It has been 11 years since that took place, and I know that is a difficult time for some people out there. And so, we just want to take a moment. I want to say that President Biden. I want to hail what President Biden. He went to New York. He went to where the Twin Towers fell, and the vice president went to, I believe, the Pentagon, and the first lady went to Shanksville, and they gave strong messages. And I think that was really the right tone. There is a huge difference between the tone of when this new administration, President Biden, is giving remarks along these natures with our last presidency and our last administration. There's just a wide difference. So,
because these sort of things need to be revered, acknowledged, held sacred to us as a country, because we don't want religious extremism to continue to destroy American lives. And this is a day, September 11th, that needs to be remembered for that. That whatever your religious beliefs are, don't ever allow those beliefs to dictate to you that in order to do God's will, you need to destroy your fellow man, because that's not right. Yeah.
Yes, I agree 100%. Now, our featured news article for the week here is on Tad Welch. September 8, 2022, Latter-day Saint leaders released statement on the passing of the, quote, noble monarch, end quote, Queen Elizabeth II. So the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles and the members of the Church of Jesus Christ are expressing admiration and respect for the Queen and extend our sincere condolences. Now, this is a really sad day here, Al, for when it comes to inbreeding.
I'll say. Yeah, marrying cousins and trying to keep that bloodline pure, right?
Yeah, it is. The most amazing thing is that Queen Elizabeth, she served faithfully for 7 decades, and as one of her last acts of love, she didn't die until we were all safe from Boris Johnson.
I'll say. I mean, she was. She's a tiger. Rest her soul. We're going to miss Queen Elizabeth. I really thought she was going to outlive us all at the rate she was going. I mean, she happened. This death happened really suddenly, and I actually like Queen Elizabeth. There's a lot of good to be said about her, but there's also plenty that the monarchy stands for, and a lot of actions that that bloodline is guilty of, right?
Yeah, and we're going to discuss that a little bit here as we get going forward.
Yeah, in the meantime, let's So let's see the official cause of death.
Yeah, did you read that just came out this morning? The official cause of death. Al, were you able to catch that?
No, I didn't. What is it?
Yeah, well, actually, this is very surprising, but it was Meghan Markle's podcast.
Oh, that was the nail in the coffin. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't see that. We didn't see that one coming. But it is nice to know that the Queen did die peacefully, surrounded by her loved ones, and Prince Andrew.
Mm-hmm. Prince Andrew. Wow, bless his soul.
Surrounded by her loved ones and Prince Andrew. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, he's the sexual abuser. Never mind.
Yeah,
okay.
He never got his medals restored to him, did he?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Everyone is sending England their condolences. Even President Trump. He said that he would be happy to donate a special place under the sand trap on the 16th green of his golf course in Mar-a-Lago for her final resting spot. I thought that was a nice sentiment.
That's sweet of him. I guess.
Now we wanted to.
I guess all the other holes are probably filled by somebody else, right?
Not too sure. I wanted to compare the church's statement here about her passing with previous statements of passing of monarchs, but she's been around so long that I couldn't even find any.
Yeah, in fact, did they have like a movable print when she took over? And she's been in there for forever, longest serving monarch. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Now, President Biden, he has said that he is going to the funeral, and so are all these other big-time heads of states from all over the world. This is going to be a real who's who of who's going to the funerals, and all of these other world leaders. As the foremost world faith leader, I can only assume that President Russell Nelson will also attend the funeral.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure they do this funeral in Westminster Abbey, and that's Anglican. So it's not LDS. Will he go into an Anglican cathedral?
Well, Samuel the Lamanite went up on the wall, and he didn't care whose religion it was. So,
True.
You know what I mean?
It's a good example to follow.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's funny that you talked about it being in England. The funeral is going to be in England. Because I read an article the other day that said that Russell M. Nelson has only left Utah once in the last 3 years. Not the United States. Left Utah once in the last 3 years, and it was a weekend trip to dedicate the DC temple. He was only been outside of the state of Utah in 3 years for less than 3 days.
Oh my. Yeah, he doesn't get around that much anymore. But hey, no. I mean, he's got 97 or 98 now.
Now he just celebrated just 2 days ago his 98th birthday.
98. So he's got he had 2 years on Queen Elizabeth. Yeah.
I don't know how much I'm going to be traveling when I'm 98, but it's kind of hard to say.
And as well as anybody, that's a long flight over to London from Salt Lake. Well, I guess you didn't fly all the way from Salt Lake, but I've made that trip a couple times in my life, and boy, it's a full day of flying from Salt Lake to London Heathrow.
Not when you're on a chartered, gold-plated, $50 million jet. It isn't.
That's donated by the Huntsmans. Yeah.
You go to the airport at 9:00 p.m. You got a full bed and a full crew that takes care of you. And when you wake up the next day, you're in England. Yeah. So it's a little bit different of a travel experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that is one of the perks of being a foremost world faith leader.
Absolutely, and I don't begrudge him one penny for that. I'm glad that he has it. That's great.
Sure.
Let's use it. Let's use it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So we expect to see him at the funeral, right?
Well, that's what one would expect. If you're the world's foremost faith leader, there's going to be many other faith leaders at this funeral. If you want to take a place and saying, I am the most important faith leader in the world, then you should be at these type of events. But for some reason, he never is. And in fact, if I think about the places on Earth, Al, that need a prophet the most, wouldn't Salt Lake City be the very, very last on such a list?
It seems like it, because Salt Lake City really doesn't. I mean, you were out here a couple of weeks ago. What kind of atmosphere did you feel in Salt Lake City? Because I myself think it's a rather calm and safe, quiet little place. It's not full of a lot of tumult per se. Yeah,
Well, it,
but
it doesn't strike me as a place that needs a great deal of repentance. I'm just going to put it that way.
exactly. We're kind of just tucked away here in the midst of the Rocky Mountains, and it seems like things are doing pretty good. There's places all over the world that really need some help, right?
Absolutely. If you think about it, I would think that a prophet would want to spend a lot more time out in the world, like in Ukraine, in
Yeah,
Palestine, maybe in Syria, you
yeah.
know,
Or,
maybe
or
even.
even in the UK, right? Because I mean, they're having their own problems, like financially, with their economy. They're having some real struggles in the UK right now. So, yeah, let's go to
I,
some of these places.
I would expect, as we discussed earlier, you talked about this earlier when we were on our phone call yesterday. You said
Mhm.
you would expect not only President Nelson to be in Ukraine, but to be there before the war started and say, you
Mhm.
know what, the war is going to break out here. You need to repent. You need to
Yeah.
follow. You need to follow me. That's what I expect to see from the world's foremost faith leader. I'm just not. I'm not
Yeah.
seeing the things that I would expect.
Well, isn't that the whole point of having a prophet? I mean, we look back at uh, the Old Testament has excellent examples. I mean, Noah was one where he went and said, "Hey, you guys need to repent and get ready because the Lord's going to destroy the earth." And people didn't listen. People didn't listen. Meanwhile, Noah's out there building a big freaking boat in the middle of nowhere, and there's no sea anywhere near this place. And then all of a sudden it starts raining and the floods start coming. And then people start banging on the sides of the ship to be let in. Another example, Joseph of Egypt. You mentioned that one yesterday. Had prophecies that said, "Look, there's actually, it was Pharaoh was sent dreams that Joseph was there to interpret as a prophet. He said, "This is what these dreams mean. There's going to be 5 years of abundance, or not 5 years, 7 years. You're right, 7 years of abundance, during which time stockpile all the food that you can, because it's going to be followed by 7 years of want and famine." And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. So the Lord sends these prophets to these places to to show His power. Right? It's not that God's against showing His power. It's just that we need to see a prophet do that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, the purpose of a prophet is to clearly speak truth to power. And when people are exercising unrighteous dominion, a prophet's job, literally his job description, is to rebuke them in the name of the Lord. Now, you named a couple of prophets in the Old Testament. A couple of more come to mind. I think about Samuel, who rebuked Saul,
Mm-hmm.
and he terminated Saul's kingship. And according to
Mm-hmm.
one website I visited, it's because Saul violated his subjects' basic civil rights. Elijah in the Old Testament rebuked Ahab because Ahab took possession of another man's vineyard illegally.
Yeah.
Abinadi in the Book of Mormon, he rebuked King Noah. Why? Because King Noah illegally was taxing his people and was unrighteous. Nephi rebuked Laban in the first part of the Book of Mormon. In fact, he killed him. Jesus
Mm-hmm.
rebuked Pilate because Pilate was not the legitimate ruler of the Israelites. And Paul
Mm-hmm.
rebuked King Agrippa. We could repeat this
Mm-hmm.
all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these stories, they have one thing in common: a righteous, holy prophet who rebukes an evil, unelected,
Mm-hmm.
illegitimate tyrant. And
Yeah.
all of these scriptural stories that we've just talked about, they can easily be applied to the English monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, it's not like the House of Tudor has always been in the throne, as it were, or in the palace. This is just the current dynasty that's in there. I mean, we've had several of the other ones going back.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the colonialism in England, I visited England and Ireland for the first time last month.
Mm-hmm.
I toured many of these great cathedrals and a lot of these, several of these royal palaces, Buckingham Palace, and a few others. I was amazed, Al, at how much bloodshed, pain,
Yeah.
and suffering is required to perpetuate such a tyrannical system of government. And as somebody who knows a little bit about military service, I marveled at the centuries of English royals who ordered ignorant knights to fight and die the Crusades, or to
Mm-hmm.
defend the kingship, and for what?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
at the
For
time,
what exactly?
exactly for what? At the time of many of these tyrants ruled Britannia, there
Mm-hmm.
was no better method of governing than a kingship. I understand that. However, now there is.
Yeah, in fact, Oliver Cromwell tried to show that back in, I believe it was the 1600s. I mean, this is going way back to the Puritan era. Oliver Cromwell tried to say, hey, there's a better way of governing. It's governing by the people. They also tried to do this back in the Magna Carta, which some people would say is the fundamental cornerstone of democracy, which is the agreement that the people made with the tyrant Prince John from Robin Hood fame. Yeah, to say, look, people have rights, and you can't just trample them because you're the king. And he signed it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Those are great points, Al. We have better systems of government now than there were around when it was 1200 AD, and it's called a republican democracy.
Yeah.
So, people say, well, this isn't a good time to talk about this. No, I think this is a great time to talk about this, abolishing the monarchy. I mean, there's serious problems with the monarchy. People don't have any voting rights. There's a total misuse of power. There's no term limits. They're inheriting the people's wealth to enrich their own personal gain. There's just a huge number of problems with having a monarchy system.
Yeah, there are. And, you've listed just a few. There's some big problems there. That having a monarch, you're also subject to the whims of a king that may or may not be mentally stable. For instance, the founding of this country under King George III, the madness of King George, the Mad King. Yeah, he was going off his nut at the end there, and that's a lot of the problems that we had were because he was mentally unstable. But what do you do when the sole dictator of the realm is mentally unstable? There's no support system below that, no way to check it, right?
Absolutely not. I mean, they don't have what is our amendment? What is it, the 25th Amendment, or is it the 15th Amendment that removes our president? Is it the 15th Amendment? We have an amendment. I think it's one of those two that. I think
it's the 25th, and they kept trying to get so and so to invoke that one, and he wouldn't do it. But yeah.
Yeah, the 25th Amendment of the Constitution, which allows, which we finally put in to remove a corrupt, removal of the president. Yeah, I Googled the 25th Amendment. But you think about, I was also last year on the Bahamas on a vacation. I'm trying to get all these bucket list things. I'm not trying to brag. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to get all these my bucket lists. And I'm getting
we are getting on in years, D-Vase. It's time to start checking off some of these bucket list trips, right?
Yeah, so I was in the Bahamas, and I'm looking at their flag, and I noticed that the Queen is the head of state for the Bahamas, and now obviously it's King Charles III, but they still have the monarchy as the head of their state. And I'm like, what is this? We're in 2022, and we still have the Queen of England as the head of the state.
There's still colonies out there. This is this has been. There's been tons of places that have tried to. The United States is probably what we're most familiar with because we're so, first of all, we live here and we're also big players on the world stage. But, India used to be a colony. Hong Kong was a colony until 1995, and then England gave Hong Kong back to China.
I thought it was 1999, but...
Yeah, one of those. I can't remember. It was in the 90s.
I believe it was 1999. Yeah,
I think you're right.
And the way that England got all of that land was by illegally annexing it and just invading it and taking it over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
none of that was legitimate.
Oh, exactly. I mean, this is, in fact, probably the most local argument that they've had is over Scotland, just because it's right there next door. I mean, is Scotland a sovereign, independent country from England, or is it just a colony? And that's been a source of several wars over the centuries.
Yeah, it has. And I think that just the last time that they tried to say that they were going to secede, that it almost passed. It was like 50-50. It just barely, they're just barely holding on.
Yeah.
Saying that they want to be a part of Great Britain, I believe. I'm not an expert in that. But, Barbados, they finally severed all their ties to the monarchy in just this last year.
Oh, did they? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This, and why are we mentioning all this? This is why. Let's get back to the the Queen's passing here. LDS members, church members, they sustain church leaders kind of like the same way the British Parliament sustains the monarchy. It's everybody who wants to sustain the church leaders, raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed, say nay. And actually, the nays don't matter.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
No, they don't. And the Queen is leaving behind an estimated $30 billion family fortune. And how did she accumulate that kind of wealth?
Um, well, she happened to be born to the right guy at the right time. And it's not necessarily her fault. I mean, this is something where she wasn't ever supposed to be the queen. I mean, if we go back to just a couple of years before her dad took the throne, her dad was he was a stuttering son that was second in line behind his brother, and his brother took the throne and decided, I don't want to be the king. I'd rather go and marry this divorcee from America. And that's exactly what he did. And, people loved him for it, for following true love over and abdicating his throne in the name of that. But at the same time, there was also a lot of people that said, wow, you just betrayed your whole country. My kingdom for a horse, although that horse's name was, let's see, what was it? I can't remember. Well, watch the movie, the King's Speech, and you'll get a great rendition of what the history was. It was.
Yeah, I did watch that. That was a good movie. And not only did he abdicate the throne, but Harry and Meghan Markle, they've also basically just turned in their titles and said, we're not going to do this monarchy anything anymore. And I'm reading between the lines, but the reason that they're not doing it is because they just don't believe in it.
Yeah. And it just seems like it's kind of an outdated way of governing. I mean, when we had empires and, like, say, the Roman Empire, for example, you had the Caesars that were governing. And for the time, you had one person in control of the whole world as far as it was known, right? And so they would conquer the whole world, and then they would just govern it. And usually people would prosper, but not everybody did. And the people that didn't prosper, they had a really tough time. And that's why the things is, here we have a modern day where everybody's completely connected electronically all the time. What do we need? What do we need one monarch for, rather than the voice of the people governing themselves?
And let's look at the actual statements. This isn't the first. We're going to get to the church's actual statement for Queen Elizabeth here in a moment, but the church has in previous times also given statements about the Queen of England, and including in 2012 where she had her Diamond Jubilee. And they said the letter. There was a First Presidency letter that said that we commend the Queen of England for her love of God, her acts of charity, her sublime example of service and duty, and said that heaven's blessings attend to her. And
Wow.
It's a little surprising to me how someone who's an authoritarian tyrant, I know that she's beloved and that she has a gentle presence and that she's loved the world over, and that she hasn't ordered anyone in the recent past to have their heads chopped off. I get that. But how is that? This is not I'm confused about what prophets have done in the past of rebuking tyrants with what I'm seeing now, that they say heaven's blessing is attending to you.
And that's just because she hasn't used that power in recent history. Does that mean that power no longer exists? Hard to say. Can the Queen of England say "off with their heads" and still, the guillotine comes out or the axeman comes out and does the person in? It's a good question. What does the current laws mean? And, a lot of this has to do with my own ignorance because we're on this side of the pond, as it were, instead of being actual subjects to the monarch.
Yeah. It's not just about whether she's used it. It's about whether she's supporting a system which is inherently corrupt, unfair, and has been and is just a vestige of ancient times. This system is not a system that belongs in our modern day society. And when the church is saying that, what else did they say in this 2012? May God bless you with his divine comfort, and our sincere prayers are with you. It seems to be that the church is saying that who you are, what you represent, and what you do is under God's sanction. And that's just a real shocker for me to be able to be reading.
That's a big contrast to, say, Thomas à Becket and King Henry VIII. And I'm now my academics is kind of coming out because this is the stuff that I studied in college, is English history and literature. And so, this is kind of an exciting episode for me to dig into my own coffers and find out what I've got back there. So Yeah, like King Henry VIII is like, well, I want to be able to divorce my wife. Thomas of Becket is the let's see, he's the Bishop of Canterbury, and as such is like the king's main religious advisor. And he says, Catholic Church says you can't get divorced. And he's like, well, I'm the king. I can do what I want. And he says, no, you can't. So King Henry VIII has Thomas Becket murdered in Canterbury Cathedral. And, this is, once again, this is just an example of what the history of the monarch is and what kind of power that position holds. And that led to the forming of the Anglican Church, which is they're saying, well, the king will be the head of the church now instead of the Pope in Rome. And the Anglicans and Catholics, let's see, his daughter Elizabeth I, who is the namesake of the modern, or the previous Queen Elizabeth II, she was very adamant that people become Anglican and started persecuting the Catholics. And then we had Mary Queen of Scots, who was her cousin, that she was a Catholic herself, and she came and started murdering the Anglicans. And it's a lot of bloodshed needlessly just because of what church you decide to go to. Because, well, do you go to the church that Elizabeth told you to go to, or do you go to the church that Mary told you to go to? And either one of those holds very dire circumstances depending on who's in power.
Yeah, and you're representing that power structure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You embody that. You're perpetrating it. You're embodying it. You're saying when you, as the Queen of England or as King Charles III, when you continue to reign, that you're giving an endorsement to all of these previous these previous horrific these previous horrific events.
Yeah. Now, grant you that Elizabeth II's been a very transitionary character in the throne, and I think she's done a great job of doing things in the course of her lifetime. But once again, just because she's really good at it, and that she's been the nicest bully on the playground, should we say?
Yeah, exactly.
It's still a bully position, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I look at this first presidency statement that the church released upon her passing. And she said that she ruled with grace and goodness. And in such moments, we feel gratitude for the goodness of an exemplary life and rejoice in the hope of a glorious resurrection. Let me tell you, from my perspective, what an exemplary life would be if I were to have been born into a system like this and realize that this system is unfair. It's ancient. It in no way belongs to a modern society. I would say, I want to tear this puppy down. I want to give all of the money back to the people who we stole it from through illegal taxes, seizing of their lands, all the people who died to put me onto this throne. For me, an exemplary life would be giving all that up and saying that there's no place in our modern society for it.
Yeah, exemplary. Yeah, she did a good job. And, one thing that I really liked about Queen Elizabeth is she was of the mindset that the royalty has to have a job and has to work. Like, they haven't been sitting around doing nothing. She, during World War II, was a diesel mechanic, and she got her hands dirty. She jumped right in and worked right alongside everybody else because she was part of the cause. So, I mean, that's a good transitionary thing. There was plenty to be praised of, and I think the church is doing a good job of focusing on that. But at the same time, from a religious standpoint, is this the church's position to just give praises, or should the church stand to rebuke and to advise and to correct? That's the issue that we're talking about here. Is what is the church's purpose in all of this?
Well said. And we've documented through the last couple of minutes how prophets in the past have rebuked the kings and have rebuked unrighteous dominion and have literally killed killed his king. Laban was a leader among the Jews. So they've taken matters directly into their own hands. We don't see any of that today. So it's just I'm really scratching my head over this particular statement. I don't know if it's because the church feels a solidarity with the monarchy because the church in some ways is kind of like a monarchy. They have a board. They don't have transparency with their finances. The people just love them and sustain them. I don't know if it's because these power structures the church feels solidarity with. I don't know what the reason is.
I mean, the church's structure really is a monarchy. Sure, you have a court of a quorum of advisors, but really, there's one person in charge. What Russell M. Nelson says goes, regardless of what.
It's a sole proprietorship. It's similar. The monarchy, that's a sole proprietorship too. She has all control over everything, and that's the same with President Nelson over the church. So I don't know if that's they feel solidarity with having that kind of influence and power. I don't know.
Just following her example.
I guess so. I'm kind of worked up over this, but maybe I've worked myself up to a little bit too far. But let's take it a little bit lighter, which is our next article is a lot lighter, isn't it?
This next article just tickles the stomach a little. It's kind of funny. Aaron Rodgers is in the news because he recently found a Book of Mormon in his locker.
Ooh, nice. Was it put there by the Marriott Corporation or?
One would think, right?
How did it get there? Or wait a minute, did Angel Moroni place the Book of Mormon in there? He's known for placing the Book of Mormon in kind of odd places.
Yeah, maybe it was one of the three Nephites. Maybe it was John the Beloved. Who knows?
Maybe.
We're going to go to Kelsey Dallas in the Deseret News. It's going to tell us why Aaron Rodgers recently found a Book of Mormon in his locker. Seems like he's been... Okay, Aaron Rodgers, with his stance, he's kind of... Let's see. He says that he was raised evangelical Christian, but he's more of like a spiritually open now and spiritually just kind of seeking out wherever he can find spiritual guidance from. And there is an LDS member on his team that was recently acquired from the Chicago Bears, and this is the punter Pat O'Donnell, so the kicker guy. So he's what would you call him? Special teams. Very very low on the totem pole when it comes to the structure of a football team, but he has made friends with Aaron Rodgers recently, and they started chatting. And Aaron Rodgers, in fact, said, here is his quote. He said, "I did make a joke with our new punter, Pat O'Donnell. He showed up to playing, and I said, 'Are you on your mission?' Because he looked like a door-to-door Mormon guy," he said. So, I mean, Pat O'Donnell just looks like your stereotypical Mormon missionary going door to door. So Rodgers started chatting with them about things, and they started talking about their beliefs. And Pat O'Donnell slipped a copy of the Book of Mormon into his locker. Not just any copy of the Book of Mormon. He says he marked it up with highlights and notations, and really. A-Rod was really impressed with this. He's like, he says he knows I'm a person with great attention to detail. So he was touched by the fact that he would put those details in and mark those verses and passages and write some things in there. So he took it right.
Well, that's the way to do it. It seems like that definitely is the way to do it. It's lucky though that the Book of Mormon doesn't say anything about vaccines.
That's right. Exactly. Because if it did mention vaccines, I'm pretty sure that he would, he'd get rid of that in a hurry.
Yeah, he probably put it right back in there. Now that takes us, by the way, if you want to get in touch with us, besides email, you can come on over to Anchor, and you can send us a voicemail, which we can play during an episode and get to know us. So come on over to Anchor, and you can also interact with us on our Mormon News Roundup poll of the week. And this relates to this article here, why Aaron Rodgers recently found a Book of Mormon in his locker. So let me ask you this question, Al, and let me get your response on this. And our listeners, you can come over and join us on this too. How should NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers react to finding a copy of the Book of Mormon in his gym locker? Is it number one?
Number one, call security. Lowly punters should not have unfettered access to league MVP quarterbacks' lockers.
Yeah, there's a pecking order, Al. Punters are like basically at the bottom, right?
Yeah, exactly. So learn your place.
Yeah. That's how did he get into his locker to begin with anyway? I mean, come on.
Because I'm sure that they're on opposite ends of the locker room, really, right?
I mean, probably Aaron Rodgers has got to be in the gold, the VIP section of the locker room. I would imagine.
For sure.
Not sure about that.
The closest ones to the showers,
yeah, it could be. Number 2.
Number 2, read it from cover to cover to see if God sanctions lying about one's immunization status.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the Book of Mormon. I don't remember it saying anything about lying about immunizations. Do you recall anything about that? Or?
No, but it was written for our day, so one would expect there to be something about immunizations in there.
Oh, man. Maybe so. Maybe so. I'm sure that he's poring over to see what he should do. Or is it number 3?
Number 3. Considering Rodgers' legendary womanizing prowess, he should read the passage in Jacob that greenlights polygamy.
Wait a minute, the Book of Mormon greenlights polygamy, Al? Is that true?
If the Lord wants to raise up seed to himself, he'll command people to practice polygamy.
Well, I think Rodgers, I don't know that much about him, but considering the fact that when you look on his Instagram, how many different women he's with, I think he might be into it.
Yeah. Eugenics.
What?
Eugenics. We gotta spread those really awesome genes around.
Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. That's not what I think of. When I think of eugenics, that's not what comes to mind. But okay.
No, it's not. That's that's the other side of eugenics, and it's people like me don't get to procreate.
I get that. Okay, I got you. Okay. Right. Okay. Or is it number 4?
Number 4 is search, ponder, and pray, then get the freaking COVID vaccine.
Yeah, I think that's we should add that in there. Search, ponder, and pray, then get the freaking vaccine. Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. Or is it number 5?
Considering his $200 million net worth, he should skip the part where slippery treasures recede into the earth.
Yeah, that might alarm him.
That might turn him off. I mean, if you're going to go attention to detail, A-Rod, this is something you need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, you don't want those treasures slipping under the earth. I mean, the Book of Mormon covers that quite a few times. And if he reads that and thinks, you know what, if I join the church and my treasure slips under the earth, he may not want to join. So you may want to block, kind of blot those parts out.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, NFL players, when they retire, they are notorious for getting a lot of money real quick and then losing it all real quick, too. So, there's plenty of things for that money to go to. Having them recede into the earth by angels or guardians is not, you don't need that extra problem.
You could also have that $200 million recede straight into Ensign Peak. That might be a good spot.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, they've been successful.
Or is it number 6?
Number 6, the Book of Mormon's Pride Cycle prophetically explains why the Green Bay Packers haven't won a Super Bowl since 2012.
Yeah, what is the pride? What are the steps of the Pride Cycle again?
You start to be prosperous because you've been righteous, and then you become prideful, and then the Lord has to humble you, so you suffer a tragedy, and then once you've been humbled, then you become righteous again because of your humility, and then you start to prosper because you've been humble. And then once again, we come around full circle.
So I guess they were being blessed in 2012, and now they must be at the peak of the Pride Cycle because they haven't won anything in a while.
Yeah, it might take a while for them to cycle back through it from the looks of it.
Yeah. By the way, that also brings us to our Mormon News Roundup question of the week, which is available only on Anchor, and that's how do you feel about the LDS Church's statement regarding the passing of Queen Elizabeth? So head on over to Anchor, and you can interact with us there. We're also, by the way, we're on Twitter, and we're on Facebook, and we're on YouTube as well. There's a lot of ways to get in touch with us.
This podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Signature Books, www.signaturebooks.com. We invite you to check out their latest book written by Romney Burke, which is entitled Susie Young Gates, Daughter of Mormonism.
Brigham Young had over 50 wives and 56 children, but none has better name recognition than daughter Susie Young Gates. She lived from 1856 and died in 1933. Yet she, like so many women of Mormonism's past, has remained a mystery to most church members. In Susie Young Gates, Romney Burke, the author, paints a portrait of a strong woman who rose to prominence within the church, fought for the rights of women throughout the country, yet dealt with personal trials and her share of heartbreak.
That does take us to our next article, which is the BYU, the Black Menaces. They're back in the spotlight again, and they're going to protest discrimination against LGBTQ plus students at BYU, and this is published on September 8th, 2022 by Jessica Bryant in bestcolleges.com. So this is an announcement that happened on October 11th, and there's a walkout that's following BYU's removal of previously approved LGBTQ resource pamphlets from welcome bags for incoming freshmen. So what's going on with those resources, Al?
So, let's see. So what's going on with the Black Masses is they have organized this walkout for October 11th, which is the National Coming Out Day. And so it is significant, but this is to protest the treatment of the BYU, what BYU is doing with their welcoming pamphlets. There is a pamphlet in the resource pamphlets for LGBTQ students in their welcome bags, but they removed the one. Or let's see, there
used to be there. So when freshmen came to BYU, there used to be this pamphlet that was given that was not produced by BYU that said, "Hey, here's a bunch of LGBTQ resources that you can use other than the churches or BYU's diversity office." BYU has made the decision that, hey, they're not going to hand that pamphlet out to students. They want all of the students to go directly to the Office of Diversity and Inclusion Office. And now the Black Menaces are protesting that decision because they say that is leading to less resources for LGBTQ students. Now, my opinion on this is, if I think that is logical in some ways, because you shouldn't be expecting the church or university to hand out pamphlets that refer students off campus to certain things, because you don't know what those off campus resources, you don't know if they're safe, you don't know what their purpose is, you don't even know anything about them in some cases. So it seems logical to keep it all in-house if, and this is a huge if the church or BYU is doing a good job with LGBTQ student issues, then keep it in-house. Well, there's a big problem here. They're not doing a good job with it.
No, they're not. And that's kind of the conundrum that we're facing, is that BYU is not providing more resources for these students. What they're doing is providing less. And so, I mean, this is, say, a step in the right direction from the way things were 30 years ago, when they would welcome you to the basement of the Smith Family Living Center for a seat and a chair, and then torture you for an unspecified period of time. But, that's it's still not where it needs to be. I mean, this is a group that's becoming more and more prevalent in the country, and so there needs to be more resources for the LGBTQ community, and not less. And this school has decided that, well, we're going to put an Office of Inclusion in there, but that's all we want to have there. And you're right. Say for instance that somebody was to approach our podcast to do a sponsorship, but they don't embrace the values of the Mormon News Roundup embraces. Would we want to have them sponsor us? Would we want to have those resources available to our listeners? Maybe not, especially if it's going to cause harm to our listeners. But at the same time, it's not necessarily for us to say that there aren't those resources out there, or it's just, I don't know. It's a tough one. It's real sticky.
People are hesitating to go to the BYU Inclusion Office because of what you mentioned. There's a troubling history of LGBTQ students going to BYU and having negative things happen to them. Everything from so-called pray the gay away to electroshock therapy so-called electroshock therapy treatment. And because going to tell BYU, they could also just go ahead and tell the honor code office and you could be expelled.
Exactly.
So I mean, you're saying, oh, well, we got plenty of resources. Yeah, your resources have a really, really troubling history, and in the past and in the present. Being able to give out additional resources like this makes a lot of sense. And remember, we covered this 2 weeks ago. BYU is number 2 on the list of all colleges of being the most anti-LGBTQ friendly. In other words, of dropping the ball on LGBTQ issues. So to remove additional resources, that seems bad. If BYU is doing a great job with all of these gay issues, then great. Go ahead and get rid of the pamphlet. You got it covered. Fine. I'm good with that. But that is absolutely not happening.
Yeah, and the way that the BYU is structured, I mean, I haven't been down to the Abraham O. Smoot Administration Building, which is the house for all these different offices, but I would actually be surprised if they even bothered to put up walls between these offices, because it seems like, Title IX, the Honor Code Office, and this LGBT inclusion department, it seems like they're all kind of there together. So if you go and talk to somebody about something, all the rest of the departments are going to know about it.
Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of priest penitent privilege when it comes to going to the inclusion office or
At all. Yeah.
the diversity office. Okay, that's good on that one. Let's keep it going here. And this is I guess this is kind of a follow up. But Boy Scouts are set to exit bankruptcy after a $2.46 billion U.S. sex abuse settlement has been finally officially approved. This happened on September 8, 2022. This is an article in Reuters by Dietrich Knopf. Now, why are we mentioning this? Because this doesn't have anything to do with the church. Oh, well, yes, it does. Now, the Boy Scouts of America secured the approval to exit bankruptcy. So a couple of years ago, they filed for bankruptcy because of all of the class action lawsuits, particularly the class action lawsuits of at least 80,000 men who said they had been abused. So they entered bankruptcy protection. Now they're being allowed to exit that, the Chapter 11 bankruptcy, because they have an agreed settlement for all of those litigants for $2.46 million. What does this have to do with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Al?
Well, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been one of the biggest supporters of the Boy Scouts for just about 100 years, really. So a lot of this abuse, a lot of these claims occurred within the properties, or on the properties, or at least in conjunction with activities that were run by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There's plenty of other churches involved as well, that have Boy Scouts programs across the country, but the LDS Church is very much a big one that has included the Boy Scouts as part of their youth program.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the biggest change in this amended plan, so the plan has been approved, was the removal of the $250 million settlement payment that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints said that they were going to contribute. So everything else for this settlement, the $2.46 billion, from all of the insurers, from all the other churches, from everyone involved, it has been approved except for the church's participation in this, meaning that the church is going to have to come back to the table and renegotiate the amount of money that they're going to set aside for this to a much larger degree. Now, the church is going to said that they were going to cough up $250 million plus the church's insurer, which was, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of $750 million. So the church was coming to the table with $1 billion. But guess what? That's not going to be enough when you have 80,000 litigants and the church represented something like 75% of all the Boy Scout troops in America. We're talking about way too many people for that amount of money. So the judge is not going to approve that. The church is going to have to come back to the table and is much, much more likely to be more money.
Yeah. I think we mentioned that before, that the church, back when we first reported this in the spring, when they made that offer right out front, we commended them. Now it's looking like, wow, I think we see why they made that offer. And they're just going to have, it's not going to be cheap to get out of this. That's for sure.
Nope, it's not going to be cheap. And considering what you covered last week in your article about how the church has lost billions of dollars in the last quarter, thanks to the downturn in the Dow Jones, the church is in a little bit of financial problems on this.
Yeah, just to reiterate, that was the Dow Jones lost 6%, or no, the Dow Jones lost 4.6%. The LDS Church lost 6%, or rather, Ensign Peak lost 6%. So
yeah, the public facing part of Ensign Peak, according to Lars Nielsen, there's much more of Ensign Peak that is not publicly reported.
That's true.
So we're going to have to see what happens. We're going to be following this. Stick with the Mormon News Report if you want to have the follow-ups to this. By the way, we are on YouTube. We release all of these episodes onto YouTube, and we release them all onto Facebook as well. Come over there, drop us a like, drop us a comment, drop us a subscription. Now, we've got a couple last articles here to get through. We'd like to keep it down to about an hour and a half episodes. And that's a Mormon mayor and a bishop was arrested for sexual abuse, and this is in your neck of the woods here, Al. Former Utah City Mayor and Bishop has been arrested on allegations that he abused children decades ago. This is Carl Matthew Johnson, age 77, was arrested, and this was put out by ABC News. This isn't the Salt Lake Trib. This isn't. This is ABC News by Bradley McCombs in September 8th, 2022.
Yeah.
So you found this article, though, didn't you?
I did. So this, he was the mayor of West Bountiful. His name was Carl Matthew Johnson, 77 years old. He was arrested on Wednesday, booked into Davis County Jail, which, if you want to know where the Davis County Jail is, it's kind of funny location. It's right across the freeway from Lagoon. So, yeah. But anyway, I just thought that was a little funny tidbit. So, yeah, he was a former mayor of West Bountiful, and then he also served as a former bishop of the LDS Church. And it's come out that he's being charged with abusing 3 children, but it looks like there were 6 altogether. I'm not sure if the other 3 are going to get involved in this court case or not, but at least one victim is going to trial. Which there's 3 victims altogether. They're taking this to trial, so he's in deep water, or hot water, I should say, about this. And this is, he was the mayor of West Bountiful from 1990 to 1997, and he served as a bishop, I believe, both before and after he was mayor. So, his first allegations come from back from when he served as a bishop in 1974 to 1979. And while he was overseeing his congregation, he had some instances with children in his ward that he abused them.
Yeah, and the problem that he's facing is that when you do this kind of abuse as a bishop, you're in what is considered a position of trust.
Yeah.
When you're in a position of trust, that's different than abusing someone who's a stranger.
Yeah.
So that's going to lead to additional complications for him. And we don't cherry pick these. We don't cherry pick the negative articles here, Al.
No,
we find what is trending, and then we just cover it, whether it's negative, whether it's positive, whatever.
And this really just kind of became big news on Friday. So this is one where, like I said, we started the week off rather dry and slow, and then by Friday, all of a sudden the church was on the front page again, and this is one of those.
Maybe this article doesn't make it onto the front page if it hadn't been for all of the AP sexual abuse stuff.
It probably wouldn't. In fact, this would probably stay local, but this is just another example of that. And, one of the big articles we talked about earlier was they found the attorney that advised the bishops not to report the sexual abuse in the Arizona case. And so this is another example of, well, you've got a problem that not only is the bishop hearing about the sexual abuse, but he's actually perpetrating it himself. And
the church has responded to this particular article. They got out in front of this one actually a lot faster than we've seen before, and they said that basically that they don't condone this behavior. This behavior is despicable. Those who, let me see from the article, those who engage in abusive behavior are rightfully subject to prosecution by legal authorities and face the loss of church membership. So yes, church has responded very rapidly to this particular article. And again, this is a national news story. This isn't on the front page of the West Bountiful Times.
Yeah, that's right. When we talk about a bishop being in a position of trust, this is a big abuse of that trust, where it's not like even like amongst your neighbors that as a child your neighbor says, hey, why don't you come over to my garage and help me with something, without your parents knowing about it, and don't ever tell them about it. This is a matter of like, okay, a lot of kids that understand stranger danger and how to keep yourself safe know that they're not supposed to go anywhere with another adult alone. But when it comes to a bishop, he's like, oh, just step into my office for a minute here, and then it's a matter of like, oh, well, bishop invites you into the office, gets a little touchy, and okay, well, this is what happens in the bishop's office is supposed to be sacred and holy, so you don't talk about it with anybody outside the office.
Yeah, it's just a terrible tragedy.
Yeah,
The
this is.
question that I have
Mhm.
is, will the church end up representing this bishop? And we have seen that in the past, especially with that
Mhm.
Minnesota case that we covered last year, where there was a lawsuit, and guess what? The church was on the side of the perpetrator and
Mhm.
defend, and the witnesses who were called were representing the perpetrator, and the church was on the side of the perpetrator trying to reduce liability. Is the
Mhm.
church going to represent this bishop? Help with his legal defense? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, he very well might. I don't know. I do recall when I was growing up, a former bishop had been excommunicated over this exact same type of behavior, was sexually abusing children. And, he was welcomed into our house by my parents afterwards because they were just trying to love him back into activity and back into the church. And I do believe that he got rebaptized at some point, but it was just kind of messed up how much the church is willing to stand behind perpetrators, especially those that groom and abuse children.
Yeah, let's hope that is not the case, because the church has come out with a statement that is pretty strong on this. They
Mm-hmm.
did not come out with statements that were as strong with the Arizona bishops. So we'll have to wait
No.
and see what happens on this.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the church is probably starting to change its approach to how it's going to handle this.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a couple last articles here to get that. We want to come in under 90 minutes, and that's
Mm-hmm.
I'm the host of the Mormon movie reviews. I just want to plug a couple of my
Mm-hmm.
reviews that I've done this last. Unbelievably, I did 3 reviews this last week, because
Oh my
this was like
goodness.
a backlog, because I had all these movies that I've wanted to do. So I've been preparing this a long time. So I just finally filmed all of them, and I reviewed the first Vision, the 1976. Are you familiar
Mm-hmm.
with that film, Al?
Absolutely. This is the one. A very quotable video, this one. This one, everybody will recognize the kid that plays Joseph Smith. He's the same kid that played in Where the Red Fern Grows.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, what is his name? I can't remember.
Stuart Peterson.
Yeah, Stuart Peterson. Yeah. So people will recognize this kid. This is the one where Lethe stands up and says, "I believe" at the
Yes.
revival. Yeah. This one's awesome. I don't know how you cranked out 3 of these in a week. Where do you find the time for this, D-Vase? This is amazing, especially when our listeners go to Mormon Movie Reviews on YouTube and watch these. You're going to find that D-Vase does a huge, deep dive into these videos. You're going to learn things, not just about the way that the films were shot, not just about the music that it was done. You're going to learn history. You're going to learn timeline. You're going to learn different things that where the directors had to kind of fudge a little bit in order to make it fit the narrative of the time, or just they had to change some things up. Like we watched the your pilot episode with the Windows of Heaven, and you'll learn more about the train that Lorenzo Snow used to ride all the way down to St. George than you ever could imagine. And yet you'll see that, yeah, this doesn't look like St. George. This looks like Nevada. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to find. Watch Mormon Movie Reviews with D-Vase on YouTube. It's excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also did, the reason I was able to do them is because I've been thinking about this project for a very long time. So I already had all of this in the bulwark ready to go. I will never be able to do 3 in 1 week again. Probably be able
Mm-hmm.
to do maybe one per week going forward. I also reviewed For Time or Eternity
Mm-hmm.
1969, and finally Legacy 1993. Did you watch Legacy in the Joseph Smith building, Al?
More than once. These are
Yeah,
huge movies too that you're reviewing. So yeah.
yeah.
Legacy. Wow. Yeah, that's a big one. Full length feature film that the church put out back in 1993. Everybody will remember it.
Yeah,
Uh,
what's interesting about Legacy is that it was a full-length feature film,
mhm.
but they cut it down to 53 minutes so that
Mhm.
they could do it on that. It was on the hour, every hour for
Yep.
6 hours a day, starting from 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock a.m.
Mhm.
until 4 o'clock p.m., so that it would fit. You'd be able to show for 53 minutes, have the missionaries come out at the end, give you a 5-minute a testimony, and then
Mhm.
bring the next people in. So it was cut down specifically for that purpose. But yeah, it was film
Yep.
length when it was originally shot.
That's right. And then they distributed that to the Joseph Smith Memorial Building as well as the visitor centers around the world. Yeah.
So I reviewed that. That's a long review. It's a very special review, and I learned a lot from that movie. That movie is kind of like a sacred movie to me, honestly, Al.
It should be. Yeah.
Because it's so special because you could only watch it basically, mostly basically you could watch it in Temple Square, and that's basically about it.
Yeah, let's see. They finally released it on VHS, I think about 1999 or 98, somewhere around
I
there.
believe it was 1997 is when they released it, but it was like a limited release. It's a very hard to find video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a VHS copy myself.
Oh, nice.
But
nice.
Then again, when I was a missionary, I accumulated a huge VHS collection. So yeah, they're all still in my possession somewhere in this house. Yeah.
Now, take a look for this next week. I'm going to be reviewing the A Man's Search for Happiness, the 1964 very, very important film that the church put out in 1964.
Yeah. This one was from the World's Fair, if I recall.
You betcha. You know your stuff, Al. You absolutely know your stuff. So yes, I'm going to be going deep into the history of that World's Fair. When it was reshot in 1986, how it was dubbed into different languages, and a lot of information about this. Very exciting. I'm very excited about that. Now that does bring us to our final article of this Mormon News Roundup episode, which is the First Presidency invites all to October 2022 General Conference, and this was published on the newsroom.churchofjesuschrist.org, which is on 2nd of September 2022. Sessions will begin each day at 10 o'clock a.m. And what's going on with the Saturday night session, Al?
They've opened it up to absolutely everybody and anybody. Now, they started broadcasting the Saturday evening session, which was traditionally seen as the priesthood session, where it was only priesthood holders, 12-year-old males and up. Were invited to attend that. This was what caused a lot of controversy with Kate Kelly and the ordained women movement. And now there's a little bit of vindication for Kate Kelly because the first step that they took is they started broadcasting it across the airwaves. So the priesthood session was for, anybody could watch at home as well. It used to be that you'd have to go to like your stake center or the church, Temple Square to watch it. But now they've opened it up where anybody can tune in to watch it. And now they're just inviting everybody to watch it. So, I mean, the church is making some changes, and I know that you're going to see a lot of the favorite traditions go away. It used to be a thing where the young men and their dads would go to priesthood session and then go out for ice cream or go out for dinner afterwards. And meanwhile, at home, the mom and sisters would make cookies or have a girls' night in or even have a girls' night out. Different traditions sprouted up around this General Conference tradition. And so some of those will probably go by the wayside, but you have a lot of people involved. And now it essentially what it does is it extends General Conference by another 2-hour session for everybody.
Well, General Conference used to be 3 days once upon a time. It was eventually cut down to 2, so maybe they're going back towards that. But like you said, Kate Kelly, this is 2013, 2014, ordained women. She's standing outside of the priesthood session wanting to come in, and now she can. If she wants to go to that general session, she can now.
Sure can. Still won't ordain her, but yeah. But at least, any sister can go in there now, and it's no longer inappropriate.
Yep, that's true. Now, that does bring us to our final article here, and this is kind of an amusing article here, but basically, someone on Reddit put together what they are calling General Conference Notes from the Future. So this is basically, they claim that they've traveled into the future and that they watched General Conference, and they're coming back to give us the notes from the next General Conference, Al. And so he's saying, I solemnly present notes from the next General Conference, and we don't usually read much in this, but this is so good that I thought maybe we'd go ahead and read it. This is basically a prophecy to see if it actually comes true because he's claiming that this really happened to him. So let's see what we've got from the notes from this next October General Conference. So the opening song is the Motab, focus on the crying Tongan sister, ends on a loud crescendo, very organ.
That's right. And then the opening prayer. You have a white guy crying before he even starts. So many, many adjectives between our dear and Heavenly Father. Grateful for many things in Utah. Grateful Kiev Temple's okay. Praise that COVID goes away. Praise that the Russian hearts be softened. Praise that Ukrainians convert to Mormonism. So grateful for Rusty. Amen.
Oaks, yo, gays, bad. Porn, bad. Rusty, good. All you gays better cut that out. Heteronormativity, very good. Mic drop.
That's right. On to the newbie general authority. A random Hispanic gentleman says, Oaks is tall. Rusty is the goat. And for any of you that are of my generation, goat means greatest of all time. That's what the kids are saying nowadays. They called me to speak in conference, and my kids were like, quote, we will pray for you, bro, unquote. Pause for not loud laughter, but seriously, though, blessings. Am I right? The temple. Stop looking at porn. Amen.
Uchtdorf, story about growing up behind the Iron Curtain. Ukraine, faith, airplanes.
And then we're going into an intermediate hymn, which is the primary children's choir from the bountiful 5,789th stake.
Aha!
Aren't they cute, adorable, mediocre arrangement of primary songs, all about families.
President Nelson, those kids were so cute. They're so innocent. Wish the adults could be sweet like those children. Am I right? Also,
right.
Not loud laughter. Seriously, though, the world's a mess and the end is nigh. Stop looking to porn. Jesus, he's a coming. Y'all got to harass your family. Gays, feminists, intellectuals, apostates. We're coming down to the deadline here, and it's going to be lit. That's why Satan keeps coming at us with woke ideologies. But we know we're right because Joseph Smith said so. Hail me, amen.
Amen. Young Women's General President will get up. Okay, I have to do the voice for this one. Okay. Have we mentioned yet that the Relief Society was the first women's organization just about ever? Emma Smith, so inspired. Joseph Smith trusted women so much. Women in the church are so super duper powerful and respected. Motherhood, babies, children. Also, look at me talking up here to all you people. Blessings of marriage. So great not to need to have that pesky priesthood. Girl power, but not really, LOL. But for real, though, that's why Satan tries to turn you into porn with leggings. Rusty is the goat. Amen.
Okay. Newbie, general authority, random Asian guy. What a great session. Already heard so much great stuff. Well, things are bonkers in the world. Draws to parallels to the story about Jesus steadying the waves via Master the Tempest's rage. And this is one of the only times anyone will mention Jesus, so don't miss it. Good thing the church gives so much to charity. Talks about one story about this young man in the one ward, like Romania, Poland, Hungary, doesn't matter, who are helping refugees on their own time, having arranged and financed the entire things on their own. Also, missionaries, somehow this whole thing is good and positive. Rusty, he's the goat. I know it because I shook his hand and got the chills from it. Amen. Next day.
All right. Next day, we're going into the accounting with the morning session. Hey, so in the interest of full disclosure, all the money is money. There's the right amount of it, and we're doing the right stuff with all of it. You're going to have to trust me on that. Sounds good? It better. Accountant out.
And the numbers guy. Hey, we're the fastest growing, most awesome church ever. Let's hear some rapid fire stats. No way to verify. I'll just spit some numbers out at you. They're big numbers. Rusty, he's the GOAT.
That's right. And then the sustaining. Hey, y'all think the church leaders are the GOAT, right? Let's vote. Yes, please manifest. Nope, please manifest. Squints into the spotlight. Clearly cannot see anything. Well, it's unanimous.
President Nelson, wow, I'm doing a great job running this church. All the data, that was great. Super humbling. Guess what? It's temple time. Provo gets a third temple. Hurricane, Utah gets a temple. Salt Flats gets a temple. North Korea gets a temple. Grins into the shocked silence. Myanmar gets a temple. Such a miracle. Ogden, Utah gets another temple. Also Peru. So great. Such growth.
Then Susan Bednar's husband. You know what? I've just about had it with Exmos choosing to get offended. Signs of the times, man. Punks. Stop looking at porn.
D. Todd Christofferson, mansplains, cries. The pioneers, they suffered so much, and that is a good thing. Amen.
And then Elder Holland. I said what I said, true blood through and through, vaguely relevant story with an imprecise parable. Stop looking at gay porn.
That's your accent there is off the hook, by the way. So closing remarks.
I used to be able to do a great impression of all the 12, I'll tell you.
I can tell. Closing remarks. Wow, so much to digest. What an amazing conference. So lucky we have prophets. Drive safe, you crazy Utahns. Bye.
All right, then we got Hella Oregon. Hella Motab zooms in on one black gentleman singing his heart out so much that you hardly register that not a single black person spoke this conference. A single tear of so spirit crescendo. Song over.
And finally, the closing prayer. That guy they asked is walking so slow.
Oh,
Uldor
boy.
gets up to help him make it to the stand. Deep breath. Our dear, sweet, kind, beloved, most reverend and gracious, holy and omnipotent, all-loving Heavenly Father. Another deep breath. The prayer lasts 10,000 years. Generations are born. They live. They die. Wars are waged. Babies in their mother's arms become old men and wither away, having never felt the sun upon their cheeks. Cities fall. Mountains crumble. Empires rise and collapse. Still, this man prays. The planets come into alignment. Out again, then in. The prayer drones on. The world outside the conference hall continues until the goings-on within the building turn from news story to rumor to myth to legend to strange mystic poems. At last the man winds down and in his quivering voice concludes, Rusty is the goat. Amen.
Amen. This is going to be an interesting one.
So, we're going to find out if that actually comes to pass. What do you think? Does that seem pretty accurate to you, Al?
Some of it absolutely is spot on. Others, maybe not so much. But hey, I don't know. I guess I catch the spirit of it. That there will be a lot of people talking about President Nelson and how wonderful he is. Because really, it seems like that's the audience of General Conferences. Hey, let's talk to the prophet, not to the people. I hope that they'll have something interesting to make some waves with. I would not put it past President Nelson to announce temples in any of those places, especially another one in Ogden or in the North Korea sector. So.
Oh, boy. North Korea, I would be surprised if we saw something there. Everything else to me seems pretty accurate.
Yeah, it does. All right, I think we've done enough damage with the news this week. Let's give a shout out to Weird Alma for this episode's music. Thanks so much for ruminating with us on the Great and Spacious Beehive. And remember, no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a being with no moral constraints. My number one goal is to hurt the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.